allowing them to take on more ability on their own. You can come up with suggestions out of your own head. The only thing is, if you know it's from you, and not from what you're saying, give at least 5, so they have choices. You could call in a wise person, you could take this one out of here, you could, I don't know, I mean, you know, give a bunch of suggestions so they can come up with what they want to do, and it isn't all you.
My son, who's 12, started saying no again.
Uh-huh.
And I've heard that that's a normal pattern, but I want to...
Sure, what he's doing is going, first of all, about this point, you and your son have an emotional umbilical cord that's being cut. He's heading into puberty. He's going to really work on defining his own identity. And there's going to be a lot of pushing and acting out and all that kind of stuff. You and your husband have to hold steady while he does that. It's part of the developmental process.
It is part of the process.
Absolutely. And most people don't know that you cut the physical umbilical cord here, but at 12, there's an emotional cut. They begin a new life of their own. And you got to cut the line and let them start doing it. And with some of the native worlds, these kids get to choose secondary parents they go to. They basically, their parents stay who they are. It isn't that. But when they have issues or something that comes up, they go to a secondary parental structure because they have to make that, they have to step into to adolescence and the beginning of young adulthood. And we don't have any rituals of that nature set up in this culture. The only rituals we have are confirmation and
16 and getting a car.
no,
That's bar mitzvah.
bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs. I don't know what they have in the Islamic world. I don't know much about that.
Catholics have communions and confirmation and
Yeah, but there's really no community ritual set up for this process.
We have like quinceañeras. They're
Huh?
like quinceañeras. It's a dance that you give a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, in the Spanish
Quinceañera.
culture.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
release
different
them.
things that begin to take place around some of this that some places hold on to. But if you really stop and think about the Spanish culture, they're still very family oriented. They're still caught, really culturally framed. Most of us aren't. And that's a whole coming together of an entire community and everybody and a big celebration that goes on for that time of life and the moving on. And it's a community support and building. When Katie left the house to go up to Seattle and finish high school, there was a meeting that was held, and there was, with all the sadness that it entailed, also a sending off that happened, and everybody was with that. So that she left there with a ritual and in a really good way to go begin her life. And, interesting things happened when Kathy and Reg moved back to Seattle. Katie was determined not to move back into the family, which wasn't their idea, and so what she did was cut them off.
Sebastian.
So, people deal with this in different ways. But the truth is that there's a lot of this that goes on. If you just really stop and look at what the patterns are, then you begin to pick it up.
I'm confused still.
Well, that's because you're getting ready to work and are in full process, my friend, but go ahead.
This was about her after birth time in that period. And you're saying that something threw me into before birth from what I said?
No, I didn't say that. I said that people go through this between 4.5 to 6 months.
Right,
That a lot of developmental stuff happens there
right,
that affects what's going on and is in the cellular layer.
right.
It is a time of no exit. This time, depending on what happens in our lives, is also a time of no exit for a child.
So my talking about, I felt like I was in a bubble and I was afraid to open it, it's a spilling of blood.
Is a potential prenatal session.
Okay.
Not necessarily one, but potentially that,
So
which sets a pattern for your whole life.
okay, so my question is that, yes, I know that I have particular intention of a process, and also knowing that it has its own flow. What in that process of what she was doing would have triggered all of that, because she,
Maybe the loss of joy, the underlying sadness, the concentration camp sign. And certainly you have a pattern where work is life for you.
oh yeah, that's all I ever did from when I was little.
Well,
We
listen to
weren't
what
allowed
you're
to
saying.
be kids.
But that was on Brooke.
We talked about not having to invite the family.
You know, we're talking about a sign on a concentration camp. Think about it. What are concentration camps? What do? They rob people of life. Now, I don't know what your trigger was, but we need to think about that for Tanya's mother and the sadness she carries that she cannot touch. She made her life her work and her children. She devoted her life to that. And she's done the best that she can to provide for them. But her life was stolen from her. And she cannot touch the sadness. So she gives the cues of what that's about with this statement on the sign over a concentration camp gate. And you got to pay attention to what the signals are that are in sessions, or when you work with people and when they say those kinds of things. Those things carry power, enormous amounts of power. And if you're going to change a myth, you got to know what the PowerPoints are. This one is a PowerPoint, and it's a big deal, and it overshadowed her whole life. She's done a good job about working, but somehow, some part of her hung on to this. And now she's finding out it wasn't what they told her it was, that it also involves work. Which is actually a really good thing. It's a juxtaposition between the 2 points for her. Because the piece of her that bought what they said can now negotiate with itself and go, well, this isn't play, this is work. Oh, work, oh, that's good. That's really a good thing. You can go rehearse and practice, work really hard. Oh, I will. Oh, okay, and if I have some pleasure in dancing, as long as you work really hard and you work hard to get it right, you can dance. You can do this thing that some people call play, but it's work, you said so. And I see you working really hard, and so it fits the frame. And in that, she can include it. I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff. If you guys think going down to Argentina is going to be a picnic and a lot of fun, guess again, it's work. Now, it has its moments of pleasure and joy, and we have all kinds of fun, and we do all kinds of good stuff, and it's work. And you're going to come back shaken to the core. Everybody who goes. And that's all right. It sets up the path for the next part, whatever the next part is, the residential actually in December. So, and we have work not too long before that you get to lay the foundation for what you're going to go do. Really good. And then the whales are going to do what they're going to do, and then you're going to do, and Monica is a brilliant director. You'll like working with her. I'll be there too. We have translators. Lots of good things. Okay, anything else before we move on? I want to get into session.
Shirley, you mentioned when you were talking down here about the parents being loving people and
Her parents were.
good people and something, but not necessarily on the astral level.
No, because they were depressed.
What do you mean by, what's astral level?
That's the emotional level. Okay? Now, gotta be careful. Love has got probably 1,500 definitions. All of you have a definition for love. There's all kinds of love. You know, I mean, there's a tremendous variance in what love is. For some people, you say the word love, and that means they're getting abused. You gotta know what the definitions are. You know, and which one? You know, at some point you really begin to understand what it is you're talking about. Conditional versus unconditional, what the hell does that mean? How do you get there? When you get there, through some of the struggles you go through in homesteading, and the more work you do, the easier it is. Because you don't have your own garbage in the way. You got garbage in the way, I promise you, you're not gonna have unconditional love. You're not gonna have it. You're into judgment, you're into all kinds of investments. If they do something, you're all kinds of things that are going on. And the truth is, spiritually, you know, we're doing the best we can taking care of ourselves. And people that we love, we have an investment in. I do not want my brother to die. I don't. And my brother is going to die. And I don't know when, and that's okay with me. But I'm also real clear I have a huge investment. I am not neutral about Ray Charles. I wasn't neutral about Bobby. I'm not neutral about Jim. I'm not. And I'm more neutral about Jim than I am Ray Charles. Jim is just my partner. Ray Charles is my brother. I took responsibility for him from the get-go and was given responsibility in a statement by my mother at 6 weeks, when he was 6 weeks old.
What did your mom say?
She just said, I gotta go do this, you take care of the boys. It's real simple. I was 3 years old, and I didn't know how to take care of the boys. Especially when one went running out the front door crying and the other was 6 weeks old in the house. How does a 3-year-old contain that? So what I did was called my daddy up at work, because I knew how to dial him on the telephone, and told him that the boys were crying, I didn't know what to do, and Mama wasn't there. Now the truth is, Mama was out in the garden. But Daddy thought she left. So he comes home from work and beats the shit out of her, and then I get the hell beat out of me. And become the bad person because, you know, I called, and I got beaten, and I got thrown around, and I had all kinds of stuff, and Mama was yelling, Daddy was yelling, I split off. When I did a process and got that one back, I went home and talked to Mom about it. Because I thought I made it up. Oh no, that happened and I did want you dead. You betcha I wanted you dead. You caused problems between me and your daddy, and you always did. She was very clear about what that incident was and what happened. It was not out of my imagination. It was out of a disassociated place. So, these things are important to understand. And what we're doing, with the work that we're doing here, all of you are being triggered. You think that I take this thing that we're doing lightly? I mean, even me. This work that we're doing in looking at what the core myths of our life are and doing the work around those, you think that you're not going to trigger each other? Guess again. These workshops are going to be real important to you. You don't want to miss them. Because it's part of the healing process. This is not going to happen overnight. We're just starting. Breathe. Is there anything else before we stop and move on? I primed everybody to go into these depths. Me and spirit. That's it. You didn't come here to get a traditional therapist. You came here for healing and to learn how to do this. That's what we're doing. That's why you guys are directing and I'm not. Other than backing people up. So, anything else before we stop? How you doing? One level of another. We really do know when we're off track. At least I know when I'm off track. I know every time I put something in my mouth I shouldn't be putting in there. I talked about the cookies. I knew that this group, and it was really a little kid thing. I knew that, we don't need to have all those cookies. We don't need the sugar that's in them. We don't need all kinds of things. But it was a little kid thing, and I don't know why it kicked in. It just did. Okay. But if you're going to change this, your myth comes out of here. Family, cultural, and generational. Myth. Trying to remember this list. Indian analyst. Maria Luisa von Franz. Erickson writes about it too, about the Native American people, and why they don't believe Erickson less than Maria Louisa, but what's happened within the context of betrayal and violation can be healed. Culturally, it just was too big. The whole process of annihilation. You can't get into the trust structure. I don't agree with that, but that's because I've lived in the framework. And both Sheila and I can tell you about the degree of difficulty of changing patterns.
46 minutes.
With people who are willing to work and want to shift them, are motivated to shift them, and what comes up. This is a very powerful force that controls our world and sets up, the myths of our lives and how we operate. And some of those we want to keep. I really like this myth of freedom. The United States is built on a concept of freedom. Free speech, free choice, the right to jury by trial, the right to all kinds of things. It's built into the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment of the amendments of the Constitution. And most of us don't even read the Constitution. Most of us don't even know that Miranda rights are the Fourth and the Fifth and Sixth Amendments to the Constitution of this country. That's where they came out of. And that if you really look at them and look at those amendments, you suddenly understand why the Miranda rights got written in the first place. So there's all kinds of things around cultural and societal myths that we have and underpinnings, and it's actually some of what's shifting and putting some boundaries around what's happening in Washington right now. Because Bush, has wanted to do a whole bunch of things that suddenly he's having to backtrack on, like trials by military tribunals where nobody knows what the hell is going on. I mean, the ACLU jumped on top of that. What's more, a ton of emails went out and said, The people would not support it. Now, Bush is stupid, but he isn't stupid. Maybe a different way. He's stupid, but he isn't ignorant. He does know that no matter how much license he's got now because of what's happened in New York and in Washington, there are some lines that the people are going to come up on. Now, all of us are up against this process, this internal process of control. Some of those boundaries and controls we like, and some we don't. In shifting a pattern of any kind inside yourself, it takes this community, and I was talking about the importance of community and Moranian concept of the second psychodramatic family, where this interface really does go back and forth. Eventually, first, sometimes there's a complete rejection of this, and then finally there's a more of a balance that happens here in the middle, with a whole lot of support from here, and not much support from over here. Okay, because this is pretty much a cultural conserve and set in place. Now, here is a person, and each one of us stand in this position. Each one of us want to change something. Each one of us are defining a new myth for ourselves, called our own identity, our own soul polarities and structure. And those soul polarities and structures and those emotional frameworks are going to be reflected in this group by what each and every one of us does. Each and every one of us have a responsibility to ourselves and what we do in our life as a framework of support and a framework of declaration, in a sense, about where we can stand. And we're all works in progress. All of us are going to be like babies. We're going to take steps forward and we'll get up here, and then we step back. That's how babies learn to walk, and they take a couple more steps, and they step back, and they grab hold. And you'll see kids, you know, that people will put their finger and they'll put a pencil, and they'll hold the pencil, and they can just walk as long as that's there. Until finally somebody takes their hand away, and the baby looks at it and drops down on his butt, because he can't walk without blah blah. Until finally he can. We're like that. That's a pattern of developmental process and evolution. Now, here we are, a group of people. And all of us are working, and every one of us reflect aspects of the inner nature of everybody else in the room. So last night we're dealing with Sally's depression. So every one of us are dealing with an aspect of depression inside ourselves. What we choose to do with it. How we choose to operate with that. Every one of us may or may not have some kind of illness or disease that we may or may not be in touch with. What does that mean if it comes up? What stands do we need to take about that? What's the interface? How much of that is emotional and how much of it is medical? In the Western sense, how much of it, there are all kinds of interfaces that go on. And that means we all have to suddenly take responsibility, not just for looking at what we're testing inside ourselves, but how do we support other people in that shift? What does that mean? Well, where are some of the commonalities? I'm a type 2 diabetic. I don't like that fact either. Pisses me off. A whole lot of different things. There's a genetic predisposition for it. 90% of 85 or 90% of Native Americans have type 2 diabetes in older age. That's just the way it is. All kinds of reasons that happens, but so what? So I'm a real close reflection. Some of you don't have diabetes, so you're further away reflection. You're more of a reflection of health and the possibility for health. Because we have in this community people who are healthier. We have in this community somebody who had a really bad heart that suddenly has a perfect heart. So that's a reflection of a different kind of health. Now, each one of us are talking, and we're sharing last night, about some of the struggles that we've had around health. What is physical health? There's emotional health, mental health, soul health, consciousness, spirit. There are all of these different levels. But one of the things that we're beginning, how many of us really walk? How many of us swim? How many of us, if we've got the handicaps that don't let us walk? I mean, you won't catch me walking very far. My hips right in here hurt like hell, and my knee goes nuts. Actually, not where the worst injury is, oddly enough. It's this part of it. And I end up crippled. Makes me scared to walk. It really does. So when I travel, I take a cane. I don't ever go into an airport anymore without a cane. Ever. Well, that's not true. I know that depending on what I'm doing, but certainly, and I don't need a cane to walk. But a lot of times you walk long distances in the airport. Well, I've started asking for wheelchairs. I don't particularly like riding a wheelchair. It hurts my pride. But we have this belief inside ourselves that we're indestructible. That we are these immortal beings on the magical level. But the truth is that we live in a world where we don't take care of ourselves. so we're about the business of how do we have a healthy myth, and in the process of that, what do we do to take care of ourselves? And it's going to take everybody. It's going to take the work that each and every one of us does with ourselves to support the others. And questions like, how are you doing? Where are you falling down? What do you need? What do you not need? What can you not eat? Like Donna's made it really clear, she doesn't want pasta in this house and she doesn't want potatoes in the house. And she doesn't eat bread. I don't eat bread. I quit eating bread. And except in Argentina, which is really hard not to eat pasta because they're very, very poor. Right now, Monica is a doctor. And I have bought groceries for her house. I mean, it's bad in Argentina right now. And so pasta is cheap. And pasta will feed a lot of people. A little bit of meat and a whole lot of pasta and water will make a good soup. And I have literally on the reservation seen people, 35 people eat off of a pound of meat and a whole lot of pasta in a soup container. And I mean, everybody gets a half of a piece of stew meat or a pound of hamburger or whatever that goes in and it gets spread and diffused. And so economy has a lot to do with this as well. But there are ways to work around it. And we're up against this. Over there. It has to do with family culture, generational, and country myths about how you're supposed to eat and live. Now, it isn't that we don't, and you know, a tremendous amount of money gets spent by a whole bunch of us to shift this. But we're still ruled by this. And every time, you know, it's like, I won't buy cookies for you guys ever again. Not because I don't want you to have cookies, but because it doesn't support your health. Because we have enough people in this group who need to be sugar-free that we have to tend to that. And that doesn't mean people can't have cookies. If they want cookies or candy, they can go get it. However, what I will do is, are you sure you really want to do that? Are you sure you really want to eat that? I won't do it to Tanya, but hell, Tanya's not a problem. Tanya's worked real hard on her health. But Tanya is a reflection. I mean, you can talk about how healthy you are or aren't. I don't know about some of that stuff. But, you know, we really have to look at how do we support this shift of the myth that each of us are trying to grow. Each of us are trying to develop. And we're going to spend a whole year together doing this, people. How are we going to support each other in this process? You know, how are we going to support Sally? How are we going to support Anita? Who lives with that cloud. And Sally, who doesn't want to be in a cloud. And the impotence, and how much of that is familial and environment and the psychological parts of it and the evolutionary parts of it that we're all working on, and how much of it is biochemical and physiology related to stressors of the brain. Manic depressive stuff's the same thing. Bipolar disorder, you know, and I was talking to them about my mom this morning, and Monica. Tanya knows that when Mama finally fell apart, we took her over to Parkland and she got admitted to the Lipsky. For the first time in her life got put on antipsychotic medication. My mom turned into an amazing being. Because a lot of what was wrong with my mother was about him. So how does all of this interface? And what are our accountabilities and responsibilities to each other? You know, we're working really hard with Maria. Really hard with her to give her the space that she needs and to walk her through her terror. She's also on medication, which is helping that process. She talked about it last night, about what it's like for her. And she's going to get some other medication that's going to help that along too, and that's biochemical. And then we do the rest. And the same thing that came up with all of this kind of a thing. So the real question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we willing to step into self and other? And to bring into effect balance between these two. And that doesn't mean that we say you can't have that. It's a different question. Are you sure that's really what you want to do? Does that serve you? I really support your health. What we might say to Susan, Susan, did you take your half-hour walk today? I really support you to do that.
Or, hey, if you haven't taken it, I'd like to go with you.
Or something. You know, and I think, it's about every 6 weeks we get together. We're going to have emails, we're going to have phone numbers, we're going to have that stuff, and all of us have busy lives. But here you come and you do the work which keeps those inner choices from taking place. They're not built in. And they're not built in because the gods didn't put them there for us. Called our parents and called the culture and called the grandparents and called systems and all kinds of things. Some of it was because they didn't know. And some of it was because it was a destructive system. So if we accept the reality that in fact we really are parts of the whole. Parts of the whole of each of us. Every one of you are a part of me. I'm a part of every one of you. People think I'm wise. I've done a lot of work. I really work hard for other people's stuff. I don't always work so hard for mine. Because I didn't have the right. But I'm doing all kinds of things these days to shift that. Really, a lot of things. Not always do I pay attention to it. So how are we going to support each other? Because that's what it's about. How do we do that? And I think that's also an internal process that each of us have to deal with. I don't have much more to say about this than that. That in shifting the myth of your lives, you have to really, and it is going to take a year. That's why each one of you have your piece of paper. No, it's not for anybody else to see. Because you're going to make a lot of change on it. Then you may get a new piece of paper. And keep shifting it. Because it's going to shift as you grow. And it's going to shift even after this year. You know, as you do and you live and you go, oh yeah, I like this piece. I want to build this in. Because life is about change. It's the most constant thing we have is change. And in the process of that, we get where we're going to go. Now, one of the things that I know, and I learned a long time ago in looking at alternative medical stuff, healing and what was it, is that we've lived a life with all kinds of things, and we get up to this point, we begin to take a look and go, whoops, this is not what needs to happen, and I got to clean all this up. Well, when you clean all this up, really the truth is, most of it is just fine. It's where the glitches are. We know where the glitches are. They come up. Maybe they're repressed. And memory is a funny thing. You can't tell anybody what their memories are. I don't care what you see. And memories may or may not be the truth, but they're the truth for the person. And you operate with them from that perspective, unless they consciously know they're making it up. Maybe they exaggerate. There are reasons why people exaggerate. That'll come into play. You'll hear me say a lot, such and such. That's a lie. What the truth is right here. This part of it was too much. But what that exaggeration did was give me a way to validate my own existence. I don't need to do that anymore. But it's a pattern of mine, so I pull it back. And go, wait a minute, this part's not the truth. That's not true. It wasn't 30, it was 20. Whatever it might be. So, each of us are going to have our patterns. So we have a glitch right here, and we have a glitch here, and we have a glitch here, and we have a glitch here. Maybe there are a lot of glitches that we don't know about, but those glitches you work on. And in the process of that, you come a little further into this healthy zone. That's why when people start to do their work, they get sick. But they aren't getting sick, they're getting well, and they're clearing energy, and they're clearing patterns, and they're clearing crap, and they're clearing this, and they're clearing that. And they go through what's known as a healing crisis, so that they can move further along, and this is no longer a glitch. People who have been abused focus on the negative aspects of their life. They can't remember much in the way of positive stuff at all. Until you get most of the abuse worked through, and all of a sudden, I can tell you all kinds of wonderful things that happened in my early life. There was a time I would have said nothing. Not because it didn't happen, but because it was so overbalanced with the other side. So how do we help bring about balance, and what's this about? The other thing is, I worked with Donna yesterday. There was a ritual around the gang rape that happened. It wasn't a pleasant ritual, but it was ritualized. It was ritualized with drugs, it was ritualized with being tied up, it was ritualized with guns, it was ritual all over the place. That process you saw was a ritual out. And it was so ready, she just dropped right into it. Went for it and was through it. And that's because a strong foundation was laid of support within the community so that could happen. That's going to be true for all of us in one way or another. Ritual in, ritual out. And one of the things that we work with in this community, in this training group, is ritual. What are the rituals that we went through? Because they don't have to be a ceremonial ritual that's set up. Now, if you work with satanic abuse, I promise you there are rituals. And you've got to find out what they are. Because if you're going to shift that and do it in a community, which is hard as hell to do, you got to recreate the ritual and undo the damage that the ritual set up. But that's a whole nother thing. We don't have any of that here. I'm really happy to report. Huh? Somebody say something? What?
Well, there's a strong possibility that it's from the past.
That you've got satanic ritual abuse? Well, okay. So I lied. So here we got an issue of faith and distorted faith. And let me tell you something. These folks will take holidays and all kinds of stuff will happen. And they will put on costumes around the holidays and then twist it all and use the Bible to twist all around. There's nobody knows the Bible better than satanic people. They study it and learn how to manipulate it. So you really got to figure out what's going on, and then you set up the rituals to undo it. And it can be done, but it has to be done by ritual. And it takes a long time to build up enough trust on their part to step into that unknown and undo it, and even to let people know that that's what happened to them. So, you know, I've worked enough with it to know what some of the problems are around this. And most of these people got serious health problems. Really pretty serious ones before it's over with. So how, you know, and I think it's an internal choice that each of us have to make about not only how we're choosing to live our lives, but how are we going to support each other and the steps that each other takes towards shifting this myth and supporting our health in a conscious, focused way. And, you know, sometimes we'll do well and sometimes we won't. You know, and support each other, which we do. We all support each other, whatever the stuff is that we're up against, you know, that's in our face. Then we do the work and we clear it and go on to the next and the next and the next. And that shifts the pattern of health for the group and takes this on. But again, there's good stuff over here. Real good stuff over there. It's not all negative. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's just the bathwater. And even that you can put on the flowers and stuff. You don't have to dump it and not make good use of it. Really. So that's about all I have to say about that. You know, this whole thing with depression. Well, turn that off. How did someone so stupid get to be so smart? I said, you know what, Bob, I still don't know the answer to that.
Hey, Simba.
Now we can see what it looks like and see if we like it. I'm gonna shoot some.
Tanya looks so cute.
Here we go. Get the bangs.
I got it.
Now the picture just took, Mom.
Uh-oh.
Your eyes always flash. How come?
About 500.
What's
Most pedigrees are 500 to 750. They're getting more expensive, and who knows why, really. Is that what you see? Up, up. Is it hot? I don't think so. There's your hose. Label from your peach tree. Flowers are spinning.
Can you look over here?
Look at Tanya. Look up. It's bright, huh? Hey, you can go downstairs.
Let's go down.
I got a shower.
He's going downstairs.
Bye.
Let's go.
Oh, pick your nose for us on video. Thanks. Look at that owl your mother gave you. I scratched his chin when I caught him.
We didn't notice.
Bye. Is Daddy home?
Daddy's home.
Let's go see Daddy. I hear him in the kitchen.
No, I'm in the kitchen.
He's silly.
Hello.
So what's your plan, Vin, so we know?
I just come do the recycling and then I can look after him.
Oh, Keenan, you can't have treats. You can have snacks, but that's Mommy's cookies from Australia. Well, let's... Come get that one. Come get that one. Keenan, come get that one. Rawr! Ay, 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 ay. Hey, Tanya's up. You want to see her? Look up. Wave. Hi.
Hi. Yeah.
Why would my aloe have ethanol in it? I didn't even look. It was the only one that had.
I think a lot of them do. Here, shoot my eye with my notes on. Just pointed at me.
Purple.
You see here we have first-degree burns from the eyebrow waxing job.
And whose idea was it to get an eyebrow waxed? Yes. Yes. Fortunately, the person you dragged to that adventure didn't get burned.
Yes, this is good, but oh, we're having a disaster over here.
The tent's alive! Oh, hello, little boy. What's your name?
Ow.
Ow! That's your name? Ow!
There's a little worm here.
Is that your magic wand?
Those are my blood.
Can we
They're
get them?
hiding.
They're hiding?
Yeah.
Oh, oh.
It's gone. It's gone now.
They're all gone.
It's gone. Throw them
Look at all those blocks. Throw them in here. You want to throw some? Went.